What's going on, everybody? Doug here, one of the hosts, producers, and creators of the Genre of Your Life podcast, here with a very special double feature review roundup episode for you all this week. No full episode of the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with a full episode of the podcast, of course. But in the meantime, I have my reviews of the highly anticipated remake, Blumhouse Universal's The Wolfman, as well as the Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothée Chalamet, A Complete Unknown. So two very, very different. I would say still hairy, but very different movies to review for you on the podcast this week. Hope you're having a great week so far. To all our friends in LA and in California, hope you're all still staying safe and well, evacuating. If possible, you are in our thoughts and prayers. So hang in there, stay well, stay safe, please. And of course, my friends, you can always find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast platform of choice. We'll still have our full video show is now on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Midway Avenue Productions. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, subscribe, rate the show, please review the show. We want to hear from you all, good, bad, negative, positive, neutral, in between. We want to hear from you guys. Your feedback means the world to us. So please review, rate the show, subscribe, share with your friends, family, movie fans, other podcast fans. Your support means the world to us. But again, don't be shy. Well, we've had some criticism before in the past, and we'll openly welcome it no matter what. So thank you all for your support so much. And again, we just finalized our South by Southwest plans. Very exciting. So look out for that. We are super excited for that. But yeah, guys, look out for our full coverage on that as we start to kind of get closer and closer to the date, which is hard to believe. It's going to be, I want to say now, it's going to be in less than 2 months. Yeah, hard to believe, but yeah, we're trucking on by. So we have a lot more in store for you before we go there. A lot more reviews, a lot more commentary, thoughts, and opinions on things until then. But yeah, guys, like I said, I have two very different movies to review for you all this week. I'm looking forward to reviewing both of them. And shall we start with? What should we start with today, guys? Again, I just watched both these movies this past week. I have a lot more to catch up on. I'm still behind on. I gotta see Mufasa. I gotta see Sonic 3. I gotta watch the one Den of Thieves 2. Just watched the first Den of Thieves the other day. That was pretty good for the most part. It was very someone online kind of put it perfectly. The first one kind of like a poor man's Michael Mann movie, and I wouldn't go that far, but very Michael Mann inspired for sure. But I'm actually hearing pretty good things about the second one, so I'll probably go check it out sometime this week. Funny enough, actually I'll do A Complete Unknown first. It's funny, I was actually gonna go see another movie originally, and that was gonna be that Robbie Williams, and apparently like, who? And to be honest with you, I don't even know who he is still. I did some research, I guess, the other day on like who he was, because at first I was like, who's this person? But the trailers were actually pretty good, and I was hearing great things about it from friends, peers, other film podcasts and critics. And I went to go see it at my Regal over here, and sure enough, it was playing on the app. It was like, yeah, like we have it playing, like it's ready, we're ready to go. I'm like, cool. So it was like a 12, maybe 1 or 2 p.m. showtime, whatever. And I go over there, and they're like, yeah, we're not playing it actually. And I said, well, it's showing up on the app. Like, I just like, what's going on? And they go, yeah, we were ready to go play it and ready to go, debut it, but the studio pulled the wide release. And I was like, wait, what? I believe Paramount is the one behind this. So Paramount, I guess, pulled the wider release. I don't think it was doing very well in its limited release. I think on Christmas Day, I think they're doing that kind of slow rollout, which, if you heard me on the podcast before, I'm not a fan of that slow rollout whatsoever. I missed out on a lot of great movies because of that. I think the last recent culprit of that was Saturday Night movie that, Nick and I absolutely loved, both in our top 10s of the year. And Sony did that kind of like slow release to kind of test the waters, and a lot of theaters didn't get it. And it was kind of like, well, you're kind of hurting this movie from the get-go. So I'm like, uh-oh. And yeah, this one I think didn't have the best reach or pull, I would say, in the U.S. market, and they just pulled it. But I think Regal does this really cool thing. I think Regal does it now. Regal, Harkins does it, and now AMC does it too, called the Mystery Movie Monday. And I believe last Monday, both for all three, Regal, AMC, and Harkins all had Better Man as their secret movie of the week. And so they had it, but I guess a lot of theaters that were promoting it just didn't get it. And unfortunately, the Regal out here in AZ just didn't get it, unfortunately. So I was kind of bummed Yeah, bummed to hear that. So I'll probably go see like an AMC or a Harkins hopefully this week before it kind of goes away for good. Because I do want to give this movie kind of a fair chance in the theater. Again, hearing great things about it. The guy who did Greatest Showman, which I'm a big fan of that movie, and the music. Um, Directed this, so I'm very curious about all the marketing and the trailers and like again the word of mouth of it all is like, it looks really good, but I wish I can see it at a local theater. But I'll do my research, kind of find a theater that is playing it before it goes away for good. Because I do want to get this theatrical over streaming. But yeah, that was my little kind of like my little Sunday afternoon, my adventure going to the movies. But that's yeah. With that said, guys, yes, this is Bob Dylan. This is a complete unknown, and I will be very honest with you guys. I would not call myself a Bob Dylan fan. Really, I know some of his music. I know some of his songs from like other movies I've seen over the years. But if you don't know what Complete Unknown follows in the early 1960s. 19-year-old Bob Dylan arrives in New York with his guitar and revolutionary talent, destined to change the course of American music. Forming his most intimate relationships during his rise to fame, he grows restless with the folk movement, making a controversial choice that will reach the audiences worldwide. Yeah, that's a pretty good. I'm gonna lie, that's a pretty good little synopsis for a biopic. I give that. And A Complete Unknown, again, it's starring Timothée Chalamet. And if you heard me on the podcast, and assuming you have, you will know I am not a fan of him as an actor at all. I don't think he's a great actor. I don't think he really got anything special to the table. And unfortunately, I don't see what everyone sees him. Again, I love the Dune movies, but you probably heard me before that like when I see the Dune movies, I'm kind of like, you're kind of like the worst part of these movies because you just don't really add anything to me, unfortunately. And I know I'm thinking of other movies I've seen, like from Lady Bird. I mean, he plays a very good douche. I'll give him that. Like he was very, very much a douche in Lady Bird as well as Little Woman. But for the most part, though, I'm just not a fan of his acting. I really am. I don't see what all you good folks see in him. I just don't think he really adds any much. I will say though, I did like him. This is going to be the rare occasion. Well, I'll admit this. I did actually like him in Interstellar. But again, he's not really a big part of Interstellar. And it's funny, even when we saw Interstellar a few weeks ago with me, Nick, the IMAX re-release 10th anniversary, Nick was like, "Look, it's your boy," and I was like, "Yeah, sure." But I really am not a. Again, I wouldn't call myself a big Timothée Chalamet fan, and I don't know what it is. It's something about it. It's like, I really do wish I could like see what you all see. I just don't. I don't think he's a good actor. I think he's overacts and everything. I think he plays the same kind of moody, like, yeah, man, sure, I'm doing this. Like, I think of like, again, Paul Atreides in Dune, or I think of Call Me by Your Name. I think of Complete Unknown. I think of Lady Bird, Little Woman. I mean, even Wonka. It's just like I think he's the same person in every movie, and I feel the same way about other actors. Don't get me wrong, but for him, it's just like, yeah, man, I'm talking like this. Like, I want to be like a Val Kilmer. I want to be like a McConaughey kind of person. It's like, you don't really add much, man. You don't have a lot of depth as an actor or a performer. And, like I said, if maybe one day he might wow me over and be like, oh, he's like the next Leo DiCaprio. And I was like, I don't think so at all. I don't see that whatsoever. That's very high praise, of course. But I haven't been really impressed by his acting at all. And I think he just overacts a lot. And again, I said before, there's a lot of actors who I feel the same way about. I'm like, yeah, okay, like I get it, like sure, but for the most part though, I really do just don't see him as a leading man. Maybe he's better than ensemble, but again, I think back to Dune, of course, and I think back to Dune, and I really do like I do like his kind of I do like that he definitely picks certain different quote unquote different roles, but again, he doesn't really add much difference to it when his performance at least. And again, Complete Unknown, I was hearing good things about it. James Mangold did this movie, who I'm a massive fan of. James Mangold has had an amazing career so far as a filmmaker, from Copland to Logan to Walk the Line to Ford versus Ferrari to Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, which I'll be honest with you, not the biggest fan. And as someone who loves Indiana Jones, I just really wasn't a big fan. I just wasn't really a big fan of that movie, unfortunately. And I do love again his style of filmmaking. I love his craft of filmmaking, but for some reason, Indiana Jones, where I was like, I remember like, when the announcement of the director, I was like, if Spielberg dropped a step down, and I was like, no way, James Mangold, fresh off of a Ford versus Ferrari, fresh off of a Logan. I said, this is the guy. Like, this is the guy. I'm so excited for this. Let's go. But I just didn't really click with me. Again, as someone who grew up loving Indiana Jones, listen, it was definitely better than Crystal Skull. But man, I wanted to love Dial of Destiny. I just didn't. And to be fair, I only saw it once at the screening that me and Nick went to almost 2 years ago now, hard to believe. And I walked out very feeling underwhelmed. While I'm like, oh, dude, like Mangold, man, you're my boy. Like, what's going on? But you know what? I will definitely give it another chance. But I remember having really lukewarm feelings about it when it came out. And that was the weird summer of movies that the big like franchise and like blockbusters just flopping, like Flash, Fast and Furious, Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones, and a few others too. I'm blanking on. But that was like the Barbenheimer summer, where Barbie and Oppenheimer were the only two movies that even mattered during that summer. But it was just a very weird summer for films, because a lot of good movies did flop, or a lot of the big ones also had no audience. Oh, wait, Transformers, right? Transformers was the other one that came out that summer too, and no one saw that movie either. So it was just like, why are these big, like, just iconic franchises just not working? And Indiana Jones was one of them too, unfortunately. But anyway, back to James Mangold. Again, legendary filmmaker, if you ask me, in my opinion. Again, I think his ability to kind of do all these different genres. He can do action, you can do drama, you can do a western, kind of like Logan was, adaptation, again, franchise, blockbuster, whatever. He's one of the few kind of directors that can really, and I mean really, 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 just kind of like adapt and kind of almost like a chameleon in different ways of a film as a filmmaker. And again, like I said, I'm not really Bob Dylan fan whatsoever, but James Mangold is really the reason why I wanted to see it in the first place. And like I said, man, this movie to me, despite my feelings about Timothée Chalamet, I just really, really am a massive James Mangold fan. This kind of solidifies him as just being one of the best working filmmakers working right now, as well as one of the most underrated. I feel like he's not really up there with like a Chris Nolan or a Tarantino or a Spielberg, but like if you look at filmography, he really has a lot of hits, even movies that aren't as great, like, for example, like maybe even like I would say maybe Wolverine isn't like a well-beloved movie, but he still directs the hell out of that. Or I think of something like Night and Day, very cool, kind of like a goofy action, comedy, but like still he's able to do all these different genres just flawlessly. And again, I think since after the reaction, I think he's 3 for 3 with biopics, from Walk the Line, Ford vs Ferrari, and now this. The movie itself, though, I will be honest, is very long. It's 2.5 hours, and I will be honest with you guys even more. The first half hour, I felt really bored. Like I was almost about to doze off. I'm like, man, I'm just not into this. I just felt so not interested with this movie. I didn't feel connected to the stories. And I got my watch the half hour in. I said, if this is going to be more of it, I'm going to have a hard time staying awake, but also just feeling engaged into the, to the story, into like these characters. And sure, I was around maybe the 35, 45-minute mark. It's when it kind of picked up the pace for me, where I was like, oh, okay. But man, the first half hour just dragged. I was like, okay, where are we going with this? But no, sure enough, it definitely picked up the pace. And then kind of caught me, kept me more engaged and interested into the stories. But yeah, James Mangold directs the hell out of this, and you could tell that he has a lot of love for Bob Dylan, this era of music, the era of American history. And the movie itself is a love letter to Bob Dylan, of course, but also to the era of to folk music and to that era of American music history, American history in general. Like there's a lot of like Zemeckis-y kind of things that like Mangold does, kind of like put Bob Dylan in the center of like during historical moments in our history. And I thought it was really cool how it kind of like intertwined both Bob Dylan's kind of like rise to fame during these certain times of American history. And I think when a filmmaker can make it feel have these characters feel relevant in American history is really cool to see. Cause I think I've seen biopics where I'm like, oh, they changed the course of history, but when you walk out, you're like, after you watch, you're kind of like, they don't like they had kind of big impact on history or the culture or whatever. But I like how Mangold kind of uses the backdrop of certain American politics, American history events to have like historical events kind of like happen in the background while Bob Dylan's on the rise to fame as a folk musician or musician in general. Again, someone who doesn't really know nothing about folk music, I was like, like this. There was a lot of like kind of like a lot of like not politics, but a lot of like in behind the scenes, very kind of like stressful, like high pressure things. I was like, wow, who knew folk music could be this so toxic and so like just like just very like God, like how it's like, oh my goodness. But again, what I do think Mangold does very well with his biopics is that he never loses the focus on who he's making this movie about. And again, that's why I think Ford versus Ferrari is just a genius film, because he knows how to like just he knows how to like just make sure that you're focused on Le Mans, the race, but also you're focusing on again these two, Ken Miles and was it Carroll Shelby? Oh, I forgot his name. Was it Pete? I'm blanking on the. I love this movie too, but Christian Bale and Matt Damon's characters. And you never feel like they don't feel irrelevant or second-hand characters in their own movies. And I've seen quote biopics where I was like, I don't really feel interested in their stories. Whether it's Johnny Cash and Walk the Line, Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby, and versus Ferrari, now Bob Dylan and Complete Unknown, is that Mangold just really makes sure like this is a human-driven character story. And I love that he can get these like amazing performances out of his actors. I think of like in Hugh Jackman and Logan. I think of Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. Despite me not liking that movie as much, he just knows how to just kind of like dive deep into these characters, these real people, or just kind of the mythology of all these people. And I can watch Ford vs. Ferrari anytime, even though it's a 2.5-hour movie. That movie just goes. Goes. The pace of that movie is just remarkable. Even Logan too. Like Logan's like 215, 220. It just goes. The movie just goes, full speed ahead. And I do admire that about his filmmaking, of course. But the heart of the movie, I think, other than James Mangold, is his top tier direction. Is the character I'm playing her name already. Edward Norton and Monica Barbaro. If you know her, she was in Top Gun Maverick. She played Phoenix in Top Gun Maverick. And Edward Norton and Monica Barbaro are just remarkable in this. And to me, I was more interested in their stories than I was Bob Dylan, actually, because I think Edward Norton and Monica Barbaro, like, they bring this kind of like warmth and kind of just like welcoming presence to the movie and to their characters. And something about how Edward Norton kind of like portrays his character. And I'm blanking on their names. Forgive me. I'm gonna post my IMDb before I forget. But the way that Edward Norton kind of like talks, the way he kind of just like like this, whatever. Like it was very like Mr. Rogers-esque, and I was like, oh, I feel very kind of just like seen by this person. I feel very kind of just like secure with this person. And I'm pulling up on IMDb before I forget. Edward Norton plays Pete Seeger, and Monica Barbaro plays Joan Baez. But something about these two, about their characters, is just feels very like, oh, I felt just more engaged and more intrigued by like what they were going through in their characters lives, or what they offered to Bob Dylan's life. And what I will say is that there was definitely times in this movie, it could be probably because, again, I don't know much about Bob Dylan, but Bob Dylan is really not a likable person throughout this movie. He's kind of a dick, and he's very kind of like cocky, very full of himself. And he kind of like turns his back on people that kind of were there from the beginning. Like Pete Seeger, played by Edward Norton, or he kind of discredits like Joan Baez's kind of like her love for folk music and her kind of like upbringing. And it just kind of just shows of like, wow, like he's kind of just not giving a fuck who these people are, or what they're trying to do or accomplish. You go, I'll do my own thing, whatever. And it's just like, wow, like I was kind of surprised that, because a lot of biopics sometimes are painted, even though like are like always like make sure like, hey, we're gonna paint these people, this person or people in a good light, because sometimes most of the time like they're involved with the project whatsoever. But I was very surprised that Mangold didn't kind of shy away from like how Bob Dylan was being in the movie is a different person than how he was at the end of the movie. And again, he said he doesn't really shy away from how he kind of treated how he treated people, and was kind of just like, F you, like, look at me, I'm very full of myself. And I was like, it's a very interesting choice as a director, also as a storyteller. But again, I felt whenever Edward Norton or Monica Barbaro were on screen, I just felt a lot more intrigued with their characters and their arcs and their story. And for the supporting cast too, I was very impressed with the supporting cast. And the supporting cast goes from Dan Fogler, who I been watching since, I mean, for the movie called Fanboys, which is kind of like a very out there movie, but I love that movie. Yeah, I think he was in the Fantastic Beasts movies, Balls of Fury, like, I mean, so much stuff. And I forgot he was even in this movie, but I was like, oh wow, Dan Fogler was in this. I like him a lot. And again, the supporting cast in this to me just kind of outshined Timothy Chalamet. And I think of even someone like Boyd Holbrook, who I'm a huge Boyd Holbrook fan. I just felt more intrigued with his portrayal of Johnny Cash, actually, and even Skeet. Oh, I forgot his last name. Skeet, I think Ulrich. He plays Woody Guthrie. It's a very, I would say, reserved, very kind of just minor character, but for the minor character that he plays for Woody Guthrie, he has a huge impact on this movie and where the movie and the direction of where the movie goes. But again, Dan Fogler to me was very, I think he plays his manager, and he was, to me, I was like, wow, I love seeing Dan Fogler and more stuff, and he was very good because he kind of like really fit the vibe very well. But yeah, Boyd Holbrook I thought did a really good Johnny Cash. I mean, I'm a little biased. I'm a huge Boyd Holbrook fan. And it's kind of like cool seeing him kind of keep collaborating with Mangold, because he was in Logan. He was the bad guy in Logan. He was one of the bad guys in Indiana Jones. Now he's playing Johnny Cash and this movie. So it's cool to see kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like see like, you know, Mangold, him still collaborating on in different roles and different projects. And we're trying to pull a picture up of Boyd Holbrook because I was like, oh, it's cool. And to me, very full circle moment, because again, as I said, you know, James Mangold directed Walking Phoenix and there's Boyd Holbrook and Walk the Line. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You kind of like a little bit kind of connection here. Like you did Johnny Cash movie 20 something years ago, and now you're doing a Bob Dylan movie. You can use kind of like a person that you made a movie about into this movie, kind of like connective universe in a way, but not really connective universe, but kind of just like two different musicians, but how they kind of played impacting each other's lives. But I will say this though. I think it would have been kind of cool to see Joaquin Phoenix come back as Johnny Cash. I feel like, who did that recently? I mean, it wasn't a good movie, don't get me wrong. That Tupac movie, the actor who played Biggie Smalls in the Notorious B.I.G. biopic played Biggie again in the Tupac movie. Different circumstances, of course. But I was like, man, like, I don't know, like James Mangold, you know, it would have been kind of cool to see Joaquin Phoenix come back. I feel like as Johnny Cash. I feel like, I mean, he's probably filming Joker or something at the time, but I was like, man, would have been cool if Mangold could have like brought back Joaquin Phoenix, kind of like a full circle moment here. Because I haven't Walk the Line in a long time, but I do like the movie quite a bit. I think it's on Hulu now, so I'm gonna revisit that movie before it leaves Hulu or wherever it goes next. But in my head, I was like, listen, I love Boyd Holbrook, but I was like, man, like, it would have been kind of cool, very like, you know, very, very cheeky to have like, oh, look who's back at Johnny Cash, Joaquin Phoenix, because even though it's not really a huge supporting role in this movie, there's times where I was like, oh, Joaquin could have done this, or Joaquin could have, like, you know, this, whatever. But again, that's wishful thinking as a movie fan that I am, as a James Mangold fan that I am. Like I said, for a biopic, I do think it's a little too long, 2.5 hours. It definitely dragged at times. But again, I just do think if Mangold wanted to do more biopics, I'd be like, hey, I'm there day one. Because I think he's proved himself as a very just masterful and skillful filmmaker that kind of knows how to capture these music-related biopics, or biopics in general, like very, very well. And I can't think of someone who's done more than one or two where I was like, man, like, oh, man, maybe one was better than the other. But no, with three, from, again, this, Walk the Line, Forza Ferrari, I think he's just, again, being a fan of him, but I think he knows how to do a really good biopic very well. And I'm trying to think the last good music biopic that I saw that I was like, oh, that was really good. But this is definitely one of like the better, I would say, music biopics of recent memory. Also, Elle Fanning, who I'm a fan of. I was a huge fan of her in Super 8. You know, I wish she had more to do in this movie, I'll be honest with you. I know that she's playing, you know how in Wolf of Wall Street, Moneyball, Jonah Hill was kind of playing different characters. It wasn't based off of one person. And in this movie, I was told the other day that she's playing kind of like a accumulation of different people in this movie, and characters play Sylvie. But you know, I didn't think she was all that great in this movie, I'll be honest with you. And when she's on, she kind of seemed like just very like bored, or she didn't like have much to do. And that could be the writing from Mangold and Jay Cox, who co-wrote this with him. When she was on, I just felt like she just wasn't really adding much, where I was like, I felt like the movie kind of stopping, kind of like, oh, don't forget about Elle Fanning's character. Like, let's put her in there. Can't forget about her. And again, she's a phenomenal actress, but I just didn't feel like she added anything to it, or the movie kind of just had to stop to kind of like put her in certain scenes. And again, it shows like even the movie didn't hold back of like how it shows Bob Dylan kind of treated her awfully. He's a cheater. Again, allegedly, this is from what we saw in the movie. But I was like, oh wow, they don't show away how he kind of treated her and how he kind of his impact has how the impact on his relationships. I feel like she was going in one direction, he was going another direction in their lives when they were quote unquote together. But yeah, I felt like she just didn't really add much to the story. And I want again, there was one scene I did like of her, like when she's watching her Bob and Joan Baez kind of like play a song, and she's like, I can't do this. She runs out of the festival. But for the most part, I just felt it was kind of a waste of Elle Fanning's talents as well, a waste of the character. I was like, what are you guys really doing here again? But no, like I said, if you are a Bob Dylan fan, if you're a fan of folk music, if you're a big like sucker for like music biopics, I would definitely go see this movie. Again, I wasn't going in being like this movie of the year. Like I said too, I'm going in with not really being a big fan of Timothée Chalamet. And again, I don't think his performance was all that like phenomenal as people are saying. Again, I felt really more interested and more intrigued by supporting characters. Again, I felt more intrigued by Johnny Cash, but Johnny Cash is involvement in this movie. So I'm giving A Complete Unknown, I think, a really solid 7 out of 10. I would say I would say go on a mat again for me personally. If you're like me, not a Bob Dylan fan or not a Timothée Chalamet fan, I would say maybe matinee for sure, but that is going to be a big chunk of your day because it is 2.5 hours with trailers and plus trailers. So yeah, but again, if you're a diehard Bob Dylan, just like love folk music, love American folk music, and just like love like this whatever, definitely go see it full price. But if I'm like me, I would say matinee. But yeah, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I thought the writing was pretty good for the most part. Like I said, I would give James Mangold any other biopic he wants to do, have at it. I think. I know he probably won't do this, but I can definitely see him tackling like the Beatles biopic or Rolling Stones biopic. I think he knows how to like really just get like just knows how to like just dive deep into more of a character study of films. Again, like I said, from a Wolverine to Indiana Jones to a Bob Dylan to a Johnny Cash, like he knows how to kind of just dive deep into these people, these characters and these real life people, like the whole mythology and their psyche and who they are as people and their legacy, whatever. So I wouldn't mind seeing him do more of that. Again, I'm hyped. I think he's doing Swamp Thing next. No, he's doing Star Wars next, if that happens. And we all know Star Wars is very, very, very famous. I mean, they're very notorious for announcing things and canceling them. And if you want to hear my thoughts on that, listen to the actual podcast. I have my thoughts on how Lucasfilm and Star Wars is run by a you-know-who person. I'll keep her name unnamed right now, but if he's doing Star Wars, cool. I'm there day one. He's doing another biopic. I'm there day one. He's doing Swamp Thing. Sign me up. I'm just a really big James Mangold fan. I really do hope he gets his flowers this award season, if not in the future, because I think he's just one of the best and the most underrated filmmakers working right now. But yeah, guys, moving on to our second and final. There's Blue. Second and final film of this review roundup episode, and that is Blumhouse's and Universal's Wolfman. The third. I want to say this is the second. I think it was the 2010 Joe Johnson one, or I think it was Joe Johnson. Who did the 2011 Wolfman? Well, I thought was okay. It wasn't all that great, but I know I do like people. Who was it? I think it was Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson did Captain America, the first Captain America. I think he also did Jurassic Park 3. The one that wasn't done by Spielberg. But yeah, so I wasn't really a huge fan of the 2010 one. I thought it was just like, it was all right. I'm a big Benicio del Toro fan and also a big Emily Blunt fan. But to me, I was kind of like, this was fine. This was fine, I guess. But when they announced that Lee Winnell, if you don't know Lee Winnell did movies like Upgrade, Visible Man. He was the creator of Saw and Insidious with his long-term collaborator and one of his best friends, James Wan. And James Wan, as you know, is just top tier director, as a lot. Huge blockbuster indie. Go on. James Wan kind of gets crushed the box office now, kind of different angles of filmmaking. But Wolfman, which Wolfman is I think it's the second. Again, I'm pretty sure it's the second remake of the classic Universal monster film. And Wolfman follows the story of Blake and his family that are attacked by an unseen animal, and a desperate escape. They barricade themselves inside a farmhouse as the creature prowls the perimeter. As the night stretches on, however, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable that soon jeopardizes his wife and his daughter. Like I said, this is done by Lee Winnell. And I am a big Lee Winnell fan because if you've ever seen the movie Upgrade, which you should, it's an effing awesome movie. I pitched Upgrade as like, what if John Wick meets RoboCop with a splash of Black Mirror? And that's one that I actually drove to get like a random theater in the Valley when it came out because it was like a very low budget indie film. I think Blumhouse was involved with that, like very low budget, even for Blumhouse standard, very low budget Blumhouse. That was kind of like one of like the lower tier distributions through Universal, and it was hard to find. I think it was gone within like a week, and then I found it like some random theater in Mesa here, and I'm so glad because I love Upgrade so much. I think it was in my top 10 of that year too. But Wolfman, I was getting Wolfman again. When Lee Winnell was announced doing this, I said, "Hey, listen, he proved himself. Kind of like was a great filmmaker with a low budget with Upgrade." And then Invisible Man came out in 2020. But as we all know, I think Invisible Man was one of the first to be affected by the COVID, kind of like the COVID box office. I think it coming out like right at the end of like February, if not early March. So I think people were getting more concerned. It was more getting concerned about COVID and shutdowns and lockdowns. So I think Invisible Man kind of was like the very beginning before it got too serious, before COVID became, as we all know, COVID. But what I do think, what the thing about Lee Winnell is that I think he also got a first look deal with Blumhouse after doing Upgrade and doing Invisible Man with them. But again, what I do think Lee Winnell is really good at is just, hey, like he has love for these Universal classic monsters. I think of like, again, Invisible Man, now Wolfman. And if he were to do anything with more Universal classic monsters, I'll be, hey, listen, he's proved himself already 2 for 2 with this. I will say this is definitely, again, I think he's 3 for 3 now with Upgrade, Invisible Man, and now Wolfman. I think he's proven himself to be one of the best working horror filmmakers in that genre. Also, like I said, he just really knows these Universal classic monsters very well and treats them with such respect that like you can tell. My thing is like if you're a fan of like, you know, certain genres, certain movies, whatever, you know, you can definitely tell you're like, are you a fan of this? Or you're saying you're a fan. And I'll tell you what, man, he really is a fan of these movies. And we always say on the podcast too, like, hey, listen, if you can really like, if passion speaks a lot, hire people who are passionate about these stories. I think of like Ryan Coogler in Creed. I think of Greta Gerwig in Barbie. I think of John Watts in Spider-Man. Like, if you really know these characters, let someone who's passionate about it direct it and be the helm of it. Because I feel like when you hire someone that doesn't really know the lore or mythology of these certain characters, or what it could be, comic book, could be classic monster, could be Abraham Lincoln, for all I know, for all I care. It'll be apparent that like you don't understand this character, you don't understand this mythology or lore. But Lee Winnell has definitely said, "Hey, I understand this, I understand this, I understand that. Like I understand the Invisible Man, and I understand my Wolfman." And he's not remaking them to remake them kind of shot for shot. He's putting his own spin to it. That's why I think Invisible Man was so kind of like interesting, because he kind of took it from Upgrade, made it more like techie and more like sci-fi, even though it was still horror, but it was still like, oh look, I'm kind of putting a little more techie into this. And I really do appreciate when filmmakers can like kind of like instill new life and new blood into kind of like a pre-existing property. And or you can kind of bring it more, make it more modernized. Like, hey, he could have been like, "What, Invisible Man? We're gonna do the whole thing with like the wraparound and kind of the little top hat and the glasses." Like that would have been very interesting. I will be honest with you, but no, he made it more of like kind of like a tech sci-fi horror. And like, oh, I like that. Upgrade is like RoboCop with John Wick with Black Mirror. So he kind of was ready for the times when John Wick was kind of like on the rise. RoboCop was kind of like still beloved, but also then Black Mirror was kind of on the rise, one of the biggest shows on TV when Upgrade came out. But Wolfman seems to be like, oh, cool. Like, what can you do with Wolfman? And again, even though we've had a more of a recent Wolfman than we did Invisible Man, I think the last one didn't really do that well. I think kind of came and went. It wasn't really well received. But you're like, oh, the guy did Invisible Man, Upgrade, and again, also Blumhouse. I think has proven himself now to be very caring and very attentive to these franchises like a Halloween. Again, listen, I absolutely love the first Halloween movie. I really do. The reboot, 2018 reboot. I don't mind Halloween Kills and Ends. I know people kind of hate those movies, but I like them for what they are. But I think the Blumhouse model, of course, is high concept, low budget, where you kind of keep your movies under a certain budget because you don't feel like you're kind of like going over budget or you too much relying on CGI and whatever. And I think most of their films are like under 10 mil, if not a few go over, like maybe like 20 mil. But for the most part, like in an era where a lot of movies are being filmed at like $100 million or more, Blumhouse kind of keeps the budgets low so they have a bigger profit. Also, I think having a smaller budget can also give you more freedom to do stuff as well. Kind of just like, like I think having a smaller budget, you might feel more restrained, but I feel like it kind of brings more creativity out of you as a creative. But Lee Winnell seems to be kind of working with Blumhouse very well. Yeah, I didn't love all the Insidious movies, or I'm not a Saw. I know he created Saw with James Wan, but I'm not a Saw fan whatsoever. And Insidious, I thought there's some good Insidious movies that I'm kind of like. There's some like kind of like not so good ones, but I still appreciate kind of like the love they have for the horror genre. And yeah, this movie, I think so. Originally, too, I think the director, I think Derek, I'm probably butchering his last name, Kafians, who did one of my favorite movies. He did Place Beyond the Pines. I think he was attached to it at one point, and they were going to have Ryan Gosling actually be the Wolfman. And if you know him on the show, I love Ryan Gosling so much. For me, favorite actors go Bradley Cooper, then Ryan Gosling. And I was like, ooh, Ryan Gosling, like signing me up. And I think he was still even attached when Lee Winnell was attached, but I think he dropped out for another movie. I think he was doing a movie with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did like Spider-Verse and Jump Street movies. But then when he dropped out, I said, oh no. I'm like, no, you just lost Ryan Gosling. But I'll tell you what, though, even though they lost one of my favorite actors working right now, I still think they got a really nice gem with Chris Abbott. And Chris Abbott, kind of like, you're probably like, who? He had a small role in Poor Things. He was also he was also in a really bad movie last month called Kraven the Hunter. Probably heard of it. If not, stay away from it. But Chris Abbott also was in a movie that I liked a lot. It was a very hard watch, but called On the Count of Three with my favorite comedians, Gerard Carmichael. Tough watch, but it's a very well-made and very character-driven film. Definitely a dramedy, funny at times, definitely more like the heavy drama. It's about suicide and about life and death. But I think they got very lucky with Chris Abbott, and Chris Abbott just killed this role. I think Chris Abbott did an amazing job, kind of like, if they couldn't get Ryan Gosling, they got a good actor with Chris Abbott for sure. And what Chris Abbott does very well in this, Chris Abbott like does a really good job of playing this just tortured individual who's just going through the ringer, like going through the ringer. And it's again kind of like a complete unknown. Like, this is a very character driven film. Like, this is a very character driven story about a man who's gonna like descending into chaos, and he's got this now infection from this wolf like creature. And I do get without spoiling it, the really cool way they kind of started the movie of like the lore mythology. I was like, oh, I like that, because it kind of made it feel like you feel more involved as an audience. But man, Chris Abbott really does an amazing job of just like playing this dad who loves his kid, loves his daughter. He's trying to like, make things right with his wife. You can tell they're kind of like falling apart, and the marriage is falling apart. But he really cares about his family, and he had a rough childhood with his dad. But man, it's just like his descent to madness and chaos was, I thought he acted his ass off. And even for a horror movie, I do think some of the horror is overlooked when it comes to certain performances. But man, like, he does a just phenomenal job of playing this guy who's just going through it. Like, he's really going through it. And you feel like, oh man, this guy a freaking break. And Julia Garner too. Julia Garner, if you see her in Ozark, who I thought she was definitely, she annoyed the hell out of me. She annoyed the hell out of me in Ozark, because she's not a likable character whatsoever. But she's playing this character. To me, it's like she's in one movie, he's in the other, which is a good thing. Not always, but I think for this movie, it's a good thing, because I feel like she's playing the survivor, trying to like see what's going on with my husband. Why is he eating his own flesh? Why is he going crazy? Why is he kind of losing his skin? Like, what's going on here? And she really does like a good job kind of playing a survivor and playing a mom who has to now protect her kid from whatever husband is turning into. And she's very caring. She's like, we're gonna get through this, despite what I think does very well is kind of like where they are in their marriage. Again, it's apparent that they're having kind of problems in their marriage, despite them having a kid, despite she has a job, he's in between jobs at the moment, and she plays a really kind of like caring, nurturing person. But you can tell you feel for her, because you're just like, man, like, she's going through this too, because how do you like survive this? How do you like, what's the cure for this? And I thought Julia Garner did a good job. My problem, though, however, is that they have no chemistry. Like, they have no chemistry, and that could have been a narrative, like, story choice. But for the most part, they have no chemistry, and I was like, I don't really believe like they even loved each other, which could be a good thing. Could be they're having problems in their marriage, but I never really felt like, ooh, like I feel their love story. I feel like they were loved ones. They have no chemistry, unfortunately. I do think maybe because, again, it could be a direction. That could have been like, hey, a reason for that. But watching it, I was like, yeah, I don't really feel that they were ever in love or ever like they wanted to kind of like show that they were in love. But you definitely tell that they definitely have a love for their daughter that they share. And again, both of them on screen were very good. Even if they kind of act like they were in two different movies, I was still very impressed with both of them as both of the performances. And the movie itself, for again, I think what Lee Winnell does very well with his movies, again, like Upgrade or Invisible Man, he finds a way to kind of bring the emotional element in full throttle. I think of like Upgrade, I think like what he goes through because he lost his wife, or I think of Invisible Man, that there's this woman who went through an abusive marriage. Like, he knows how to bring these like emotional elements and aspects to these movies, despite them being thriller and horror, quote unquote thriller and horror movies. That Lee Winnell he definitely knows how to tap the emotional strings and like kind of like the heartfelt moments, of course. But man, there's times in the movie, typically with Chris Abbott and the actress playing her daughter, and what are their names in the Wolfman? Actually, I should know the characters' names by now. Yeah, Blake played by Chris Rabbit, Charlotte played by Julie Garner, and the daughter is Ginger, played by Matilda Firth. And again, when Blake is really going through the whole transformation of becoming the Wolfman, like, you tell that like he's still number one priority is taking care of his daughter and make sure his wife and daughter are safe. And you're like, man, you're just going through something that none of us know what you're going through, because this is a mythology. This is like a disease. This is a curse. But again, I was just, even though like I would say like most of the movie is more like body horror and body transformation, I still give Chris Abbott a lot of props for kind of making us feel like engaging and making us kind of feel like we're on the ride with him. Also, that's kudos to Lee Winnell's direction and storytelling. But yeah, I was very like, ooh, like this is creepy, but I'm into it. And this movie is very unsettling. There was times where I was like, looking away, like even the my friends I was singing with at the screening, like we were like, like, oh no, like, and there's a lot of like bloody and gore. You're like, oh, very unsettling. Like, I'm trying to pull it up right here. If you're watching on the video aspect of the show, there's one scene right here that you'll see plus on the trailer, but like regarding his arm, you're just like, no, don't do that. Like, what are you doing, bro? Like, don't be doing that. But again, I think it's just the slow descent into not slow actually, and descent into chaos. And this movie, my biggest praise of this movie, it's a tight script. So yeah, an hour and 30. This movie just goes. It goes. They establish some things at the beginning of the movie, like a good movie should, but this is a very tight script where I was like, it's very contained, it's very controlled, and I think even Upgrade has a pretty tight script for the most part. Invisible Man did have more kind of like more themes and more like kind of like more of a commentary, I'll say. But with Wolfman, it's a very tight script. They're in San Fran in the beginning, and then they're in Portland, like maybe 20 minutes in, if not less. And the movie is all contained in this cabin and in the woods. And you're like, oh, I like that. Again, I'm a big sucker for movies that are contained or have one main location. And also, too, to Blumhouse's credit and to Lee Winnell's credit, is that they both shoot on location with real sets being built. This could have been like shot on a green screen for like probably half the budget, but Lee Winnell likes to kind of utilize his locations like an Upgrade, like Invisible Man. Now Wolfman's like you feel like you're actually in the woods, like, oh man, this happens. Like if you're in Oregon right now, I'd be careful to go to Oregon. Or I feel like, oh, I'm in the woods, I'd be careful looking out for what's following me, whatever. You feel that you sense the danger for real. And also too, they said in this interview last week on the YouTube channel for Lee Winnell's Universal page, is that most of the movie is practical effects. It's practical designs. It's creature designs. It's real things being broken and smashed into. And I'm like, oh, I like that. But then like Upgrade, I think of Invisible Man. I'm like, yeah, for the most part, a lot of that film is practical. A lot of that film is you being used practical. I do think a lot of good horror movies recently have been utilizing horror practical effects. I think of like A Smile. I think of Late Night with the Devil. I think of Strange Darling. Like a lot of this movie is done. These movies are done practically. I think it's what horror is doing very well compared to other genres. Is that they still go back to the special effects like this. If you have the visual aspect, you see this kind of creature through the car. But horror has not shied away from its practicality with special effect, on location building sets, real locations, shooting real location on a green screen or blue screen, whatever. And all three of his films, I'm like, yeah, Lee Winnell is doing this very well, and Blumhouse's model was very kind of keep it up, like they kind of keep their tradition of like building real sets and real creatures and real monsters and animatronics, whatever, to kind of make it feel like this could actually happen. This is real, and obviously this probably won't happen in real life, but still, they make you feel like it could happen. And again, again, I think when you have a lower budget, you're more constrained in a good way to kind of like really kind of bring out some amazing practical creature effects and locations. Other than my con of, I would say, the chemistry between Chris Abbott and Julia Garner, I wouldn't have minded. I actually wouldn't have minded more. It's for an hour and a half movie. I thought with the pace and tight script, but like there was times where I was kind of like, oh, I could have like used a bit more. And there are things, I'll be honest with you too. There are things where I was like, kind of saw that coming. I saw that coming. And like, oh, there's things that why I called out at the beginning of the movie. I was like, that's gonna happen. And it happened. I was like, okay, or this is going to happen. It happened. So I never like kind of being like, oh, look at me. I know it's going to happen before you do. I don't like being that person or movie fan whatsoever. But I did notice a few things right away. I was like, that's going to be into play later, or this is going to happen, or this is going to happen. Like, okay, so there are some predictable things for sure. I think people calling it half-baked in this movie, like, kind of like undercooked. And I can see their argument there are things I'm kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like a bit formulaic, but like, I mean, what movie isn't nowadays? I mean, a lot of things are formulaic, but there were things where I was like, yeah, I saw that coming too, or I was like, yeah, this seems like this might happen, or oh yeah, that happened, surprise. But again, I think it's pretty hard too when horror gets to kind of like, I mean, you can do so much with horror, of course, but there are things where it's it's hard to like say, oh, this hasn't been done before. When in reality, it's like, nah, it's been done before. We've seen that too. But again, even though I did like the movie quite a bit, I was like, yeah, I definitely see this. I definitely saw things coming where I was like, yeah, you ain't fooling me. I knew. No, I wasn't that way. IMDb, I wasn't that way whatsoever. But yeah, I think I still prefer Invisible Man upgrade over Wolfman. But again, I really do like what Lee Winnell was doing. And if Lee Winnell wanted to do more Universal classic monsters, I say, hey, my man, give him free will. Like, give him free will. He's proven himself worthy as a great filmmaker. Also, too, what I love about his movies too is the camera work. His camera work and cinematography in his movies are just outstanding. The fight scene, choreography, and Upgrade are some of the best I've seen in a long time. That movie was now almost, no, it was seven years ago. You're just like, oh my gosh. And the camera work and cinematography in Invisible Man is just genius. And I'm like, wow. Like, and he doesn't fully go there with the Wolfman, but there's some really cool shots, and like the way he lights things too, or the way he kind of like shows like the Wolfman's vision to like the human vision, his senses versus human senses. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool how he kind of plays with like lighting and coloring as he did with Upgrade and Invisible Man. But in this one, there are some kind of Lee Winnell like camera, like kind of like signature camera moves, but not as apparent as they were in his last two films. But there was some cool, I'm like, oh, that's really cool how he shot that. That's cool how he shoots this. Again, I think that's why I do like his movies a lot, because he really utilizes everything: lighting, sound, camera work, kind of like really old school practical movie magic. That's why we love going to the movies. And I think he kind of so like embodies a lot of that like kind of old school filmmaking techniques, which I admire him about a lot in his movies. But yeah, I had a ton of fun with this movie. Like I said, I think it's one of Blumhouse's better, I don't know, not better, but like more enjoyable one. I think last year, the year before, I was like, man, Blumhouse is not hitting it the way they used to. I like Speak No Evil, but I wasn't like blown away by it. I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't really a big fan of Night Swim. You heard me on the show. We were not a fan of Night Swim, or even, I know it made a lot of money, but Five Nights at Freddy's, I didn't really care for. I was like, man, Blumhouse is kind of losing me. I didn't care for Totally Killer. I don't really care for Megan personally, but I was like, for this one, I was like, oh, I'm with this for sure. Like, yeah, this is what I'm about. And to me, like I said, that's probably one of my more favorite Blumhouse movies in quite some time. Where I was like, oh yeah, go back to this. This is my stuff. This is my shit. This is what I guess I come to the movies for. So I'm gonna give, ooh, I'm gonna give Wolfman. Ooh, that's tough. Yeah, I do like Upgrade and Invisible Man more. Yeah, I would go Upgrade Invisible Man, not Wolfman. See this with the crowd. See this with the audience. I think horror for sure. Comedy, if they ever make comedy movies again in theaters, and they should. Um, I think horror and comedy are like two. I mean, even superhero movies too. Again, the big spectacle. Again, I love seeing Spider-Man and theater. I love seeing Avengers with the audience, whatever. But something about horror and comedy, just like the energy in that audience is like just so like electric and so just so like full of life and so full of like just like clapping like, oh no, oh, you're all kind of collective like, oh no, the kind of like, the whole collective experience is why we go to the movies. And but especially in this, it's like it was just fun seeing people's reaction of like, don't do it, don't do that, no. It's like it's why you go get yelling at the screen. You're in this, you're kind of in this together. That collective experience is very special, and I think horror still has that pull when it comes to going to a movie theater and seeing a horror movie like that in the big screen. But to give this movie, I would give this movie really a solid 7.5 out of 10. I would put Upgrade at a 9, Visible Man at an 8, and this I would give this movie. I'll probably watch it again I'll probably watch it again opening weekend. I'll see this weekend or next week sometime. But I'll give this movie a solid 7.5 out of 10 because I really did like a lot of the movie. And again, I do like just getting tight script, hour and a half, boom, 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 in and out. There you go. Nothing too crazy, nothing too flashy. It's like boom, 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 boom. But again, because I thought things were kind of predictable and kind of like formulaic, I was like, you only push the envelope the same way you did with Upgrade and Invisible Man. But again, this to me was, again, it definitely is a worthy remake of a universal classic monster movie that I think a lot of people grew up on, like Invisible Man, The Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, like all these movies. And honestly, too, I know they're doing another Mummy movie now with Blumhouse, but I actually would have liked to see Lee Winnell do a Mummy movie or whatever at this point. I think he has a Keys to the Kingdom, I think. And I think he's still doing a Green Hornet movie, which I'm very curious about. If he makes it like Upgrade, sign me up. I will be there day one. I will be there in line if I have to. If he's still doing that, I cannot wait for that. Because again, if you see Upgrade and the way he shoots action scenes and action kind of cinematography, choreography is just mind blowing. I think Upgrade's on Netflix, so definitely check out Upgrade. And I think Invisible Man's on Peacock, I want to say, but. Yeah, I'm giving Wolfman 7.5 out of 10. I liked it a lot more than the last Wolfman remake. But yeah, definitely check this again. See with the crowd. It's just fun. See opening weekend. See with the crowd. See with the big audience. Again, like that collective experience in the horror movies is you can't it's hard to match that, I think, in other movies. But yeah, check out Wolfman. But yeah, guys, that is this week's review Roundup episode. Hope you all enjoyed me rambling about these two very different films. But again, I do think there's a lot of like life right now in the movie business. Again, this is the first big movie I think of 2025. Good for Universal and Lee Winnell. What came out last week? What came out last week? I think a lot of it was like kind of like repeat stuff. We all know Better Man didn't do well, fortunately. But anyway, I think the myth of like movie in January are like bad. I think it's kind of stopped the past couple of years. I think this is definitely one of the better January movies that we've had. I think Megan came out in January 2 years ago too, so that was a big hit. So I think that the whole myth of like if you movie in August or January, it's a bad movie. I think those days have passed. I do think that the studios and the production companies and the filmmakers know that, hey, listen, I think sometimes maybe a quieter weekend is better for a movie like this. And yeah, I had a ton of fun with this movie. Go check it out. But I hope you guys, again, enjoyed my rambling about all things movies, TV, and entertainment. Again, we'll be back with a full episode next week. And again, probably catch up on some movies this week too. I know also the ASU one that we should probably review because me and Nick and Mozell went to ASU, the Unstoppable one, the true story about the incredible wrestler. So hopefully we have a review of that next week. And just catch up on some movies and shows, of course. But thank you all for tuning in this week. Side note, a little tangent. Listen to my favorite artist of all time, one of my favorite artists of all time. Mac Miller has an album coming out tomorrow called Balloonerism. Again, I'm wearing his shirt right now. If you can see it on the visual aspect of the show. He's a beautiful musician. He's one of my favorites. A lot of my friends kind of bonded over his music. It's a long-awaited album that was kind of like unreleased. That was kind of like leaks copies of it out for the past couple of years. It will be on Spotify, Apple tomorrow. If you still collect vinyls like me, buy it on vinyl. I'm hearing again. I've heard I've heard the unreleased version, but I can't wait to listen to it tomorrow. So if you're a hip hop fan like me or a Mac Miller fan like me, tomorrow comes out. So check it out. But those, my friends, have a lovely weekend, and of course, we'll see you guys at the movies.